Welcome everybody. Rick DiClemente with Star Self and with Astrology Unplugged. Tonight's subject has to do with one of my clients. One of my students asked me if it was real common for Uranus to be strongly placed in the charts of comedians. So I started researching and found out the answer was yes. So we're going to focus on that pretty well. I want to tell you a story first before we get into that and we study these very famous comedians. In 1982, I had a small radio station. I did a small astrology program on the radio. And I had met the Reverend Greg Keen, K-E-H-N, who was a Reverend, fourth generation medium psychic out of Lilydale. And I'd gone to him for a reading. We got to be friends, and one thing led to another, and it got to a point that you're like this, Susan. Greg started to appear on my show, and once a month, I trained my programming assistant to do the knobs. So I would get the phone call, get the birth information, take a 1-minute commercial, come back, look up your chart, write it down on paper, and start reading, all in 1 minute. So you got to be quick. And I broke myself in that way. So then when Greg came on, Greg gave them a medium reading. So I would get their birth information, I would do the scribbles, and he would give them a mediumship reading. And then it would come back to me, and I'd give him an astrological reading. And then on the commercials, he and I would compare notes. Well, Greg and I have had a very hard time in these 40 years, 37 years trying to stay in touch, but we just did. And Greg will be my guest next week, just like he was in 1982 and 83 and 84. And he will be here, and he's brilliant, and I will be interviewing him about a lot of things with mediumship and spirituality, and he will be doing your readings for you. I don't know how long he's going to give you, but it'll be up to him. He's been doing this 40 years. He is a fourth generation. I know him very well, and I've seen him knock people's socks off. I guess you could say he's kind of like Jonathan Edwards. Gives those kind of readings very quick. He's a Capricorn, a lot of Pisces, and really quick. So he'll be joining us. You'll see notes going out this week about his appearance next week. So tonight, Susan Aver sent me a note saying, is it common for these comedians to be so quick and have strong Uranus in their chart? And I say, yes, it is very common. You'll be surprised to know that I've got about 10 people to show you, and the really quick ones, like the Robin Williams, have the strongest Uranus. And I'm born with Sun opposite Uranus. So mine is quick, but I'm not a comedian, but that's why I'm quick astrologically, and I can, the Uranian mind is just always moving very quickly. So tonight is a really good example of what's the difference between Uranus in a natal chart and Uranus that's transiting. They're very different. And by you understanding this, this will really help. And I like to talk about Uranus because it's the last planet before Neptune and Pluto that we seem to have some control over. You can't really turn down the intensity, but you can kind of ride that wild bronco or not, or let the bronco beat you up, but you can identify with it. The other ones, Neptune and Pluto in Eris, and the ones out further, are very difficult planets to understand. They work at a collective level. So does Uranus, but Uranus also works very heavily on the individual level. So tonight turned out to be a lesson in Uranus. Starting with, is it Uranus? Is it Uranus? There's lots of arguments. The dictionary says it's Uranus, followed by Uranus, and of course, the great ones call it Uranus. So you fight it out, figure out what you want to call it. If you call it Uranus, you're going to get a lot of bad jokes, and I've heard them all many times. So welcome aboard, and this is episode number 48 as we close in on the year. So we're going to go to the charts right away, and I'm going to start to show you how it is in the natal chart. And that's going to lead you to understanding transits too. So keep in mind what's common, what's natal, what's transiting. You'll start to understand more and more. So here we see the first chart up is the chart of Jim Carrey. Now you can see his is extremely powerful because it's right on the midheaven and it's in Leo. You can see him. He's got one part of his face out doing something while this other part's getting ready to go. He's so unbelievably quick. That's what Uranus does. It's quick. It's fast. It's sudden and shocking. The other one I wanted to take a look at tonight is Jonathan Winters. You saw when he started on Mork and Mindy, you saw he's going now do, and he's just throwing all this off the wall stuff. It's because his energy is just pouring through this guy. It pours through him, and it's in Leo. The Leo's not going to stop it or try to modify it. It expresses it. This is where the Capricorn, Jim Carrey, gets it from the Uranus. And it's really powerful because it's right on the midheaven. And yes, we have Neptune rising. And Neptune leads him towards being dreamy and kind of spaced out and love of filmmaking and image. He's a hell of a, if you don't know this, he's a hell of a painter. You got to look up the images that this guy paints. I mean, he's really good. Yeah, you have the sun in Capricorn. So much for these people that tell you he's not very creative. That's what they told me in 71. That's why I started astrology. My astrologer told me I wasn't very creative because I had Sun square Saturn. Boy, was she wrong after 25 movies later. The Jupiter Mercury makes him in Aquarius, makes him very quick, very sudden, innovative, off the wall. And yeah, you got a bucket pattern to the moon in Gemini. So the moon in Gemini is kind of crazy too. He really seems like such a nice person. He's actually very spiritual, very learned, very much feels for humanity. That's the strong Uranus. Uranus rules Aquarius, and they share qualities. And Aquarius is very humane and idealistic. So you have to understand that a planet is different than the sign it rules, but it's really so much like it. And you're never going to get a black and white list. What does the planet rule? What does the sign rule? They're very similar. A sign like Aquarius in you is more placid. It's more part of you. It's more easygoing the way it expresses. A planet is more jagged. Okay, a planet's energy is more fighting. So you can see with him that you just can't stop this guy. All right? Because the Uranus in Leo is so powerful. I remember seeing, you can even look this up on YouTube, seeing, I remember the night it happened, he was on Johnny Carson, sitting next to Jonathan Winters. And these guys just about had that couch levitating off the ground. They went just nuts, and they were just having so much fun and just so quick in the way they can change one face to another. Really fast. Now, let's stop for a minute. The main thing you will see with Aquarians being ruled by Uranus is they want to master the mental puzzle. They're always doing something, and they're always building the mental puzzle. They're trying to figure out how the world fits together. And you'll see this with all the Aquarians. They get obsessed with it. And because they're a fixed sign, and it's an air sign, they don't want to hear what anybody else has to say. Not because they're arrogant. They're very friendly. The friendliest. They're just self-dependent on their own mind. So with all these Uranian people, you'll see they've got their own mental world picture figured out. Now let's take, I kept discovering more and more people like Lou Costello and Sam Kinison and on and on and on. I just draw the line somewhere. Let's take a look at some more people. All right. Let's take a look next at Phyllis Diller. Now you'll notice that this is not a planet. This is the North Node. And this is not a planet, sorta. This is Chiron. So what you have with Phyllis Diller is all these planets right here within 90 degrees, and Uranus all by itself, and Uranus is in Aquarius. In the 9th house of speaking, addressing the public. So remember when you saw her back in the 60s and she looked like she had her finger plugged in the wall socket and her hair was sticking straight up? That was her gimmick. That was her shtick. But she came up with off-the-wall stuff. And remember, she had that very loud cackle. She'd tell a joke and she'd cackle at her own joke. So she was very lively, and she had that cigarette on, I forget what you call it, the cigarette stick. And she would laugh at her own joke and make fun of her husband. And she was very, very quick. But the key with her was, it was the Uranian side of being unpredictable and out of the box and off the wall. And she was much tamer than the other woman we're going to see here later called Joan Rivers, who has a much more biting type of Uranus. So hers was friendlier, and she did have 4 planets in Cancer, Pluto, Moon, Sun, Mercury, and you could sense that with her. You could sense the Cancer with her. You could sense that she was warm and caring, but nevertheless the off-the-wallness. And I looked up Tommy Smothers, another Aquarian. If they're really quick and off the wall, it's Uranus. Period. That's just where it comes from. And if you don't have it, you can't do it. You can't process that fast. And Uranian people process so quickly. It's very common. They have insomnia. It's very common. They get obsessed with ideas. They can't stop. It's very Aquarian that they have to master something. Baseball scorekeeping, baseball card collecting, any kind of collecting, they get obsessed until they master it. They just have to. Then they go on to something else. There's a difference between Gemini and Aquarius. Aquarians have to master it. Once they get mastered, they got it and they move on. But because you've heard that phrase that to be enlightened, you can study a blade of grass. You could study one blade of grass and become enlightened because the grass has every property in it. That's Aquarian. That's one reason they study so deeply, and they can quickly make those attributes shared in a quantum way, in a holographic way with all things. Gemini is different. Gemini is just curious about things. Then they get bored. I mean, our president has already told us 2 months in that he's bored. How in the world can you be the president of the United States and be bored? You got a bowling alley downstairs. You can go do anything you want. You got your own 747 jet. You can call anybody you want, video. You can have anything you want on a meal. I mean, it's just the nature of Gemini to be bored. They get bored because their mind is always, what's on the next side? What's on the next side? What's over the next fence? What's over the next fence? What's over the next fence? It's torturous. Completely different. Lateral learning, Aquarian, vertical learning. Let's go back. Okay. Let's go to Curly. My God, one of my favorite actors ever from the Three Stooges. He was so Uranian. Remember how he would go whoop, 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 and dance backward and slap himself? I mean, that's Uranian energy. You'll see that that energy is very close to the same energy Jerry Lewis had. Jerry Lewis had that kind of off-the-wall, crazy kind of energy that's coming out. It's like there are not enough limbs for it to come out of. That is Uranus, okay? If you ever seen Uranian people dance, do you ever remember seeing scenes of Jerry Lewis dancing like a goof and his nuts and bolts are coming apart and he's just dancing like an idiot? That's Uranian, because Uranus is always, its nature is to go away from the norm. Its nature is electronically to just go like a lightning bolt away from the straight line. Lightning is Uranian. The lightning bolt is Uranian. Watch how the humor comes out of the mouth so quickly of who was in City Slickers? Oh, Billy Crystal. Okay. There's a Uranian mind too. He's just so quick, fast. All right, so we look at Curly. Curly's is massively strong because Curly's, even though it's in the 12th house, it's in Sagittarius and it's next to Mars, and they're both opposite Pluto. So his placement is not so important. It's more along the fact that it's with Mars in Sag, where Sag is the sign of no control. Sag is the sign of no inhibitions. It just came out, right? And opposite Pluto, very close, 20 and a half, 21 and a half, 22 and a half. And the T-squares all go down to Jupiter. So that Uranus was coming out. And what happens with Uranian people? It's very common. They die of strokes. It's just very common because you have such powerful cosmic energy pouring through your nervous system. He had several strokes leading up to his big one when he was 42, 43, I believe. It's very sad. But that's where the whoop, 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 that's where the quickness comes from. I don't know what happened to Susan Avare. Looks like she may be eating, or else she's just listening, but I want to make sure that she's tuning in. Okay, there she is. Jitterbug. Jerry Lewis jitterbugging. Oh boy. I'm sure we could get a scene of this one. Yeah, I saw this today. Boy, Mark, thank God for Mark out there, huh? Let me try to get this coming through here. We're gonna watch Jerry Lewis jitterbug. Technology. Here it goes. Watch the spastic movements. Watch the leg do something in the arm that does the head. They're like all independent, not unified.
Ladies and gentlemen, never have I been so deeply touched. Home of Flag has asked permission to enter our dancing contest. One final gauntlet thrown into the face of the Grim Reaper. Shall we let him? No! Homer, you're very fortunate this evening. My friends, we are indeed very happy to present last year's contest winner, Miss Sherry North.
Watch his body. It's like 10 different things at once.
Baby, that's what you're gonna do. You're gonna dance with me. Baby, I've got my on you. I'm gonna dance with us. Baby, this is love. We're gonna win what's up. Hey, we'll take the prize away. I'm gonna have my baby right on the way to dance. No other gal. I want the winner, not a beginner. No other guy for you. Baby, what makes you think you're free? Tell all the others to dance with the brother. That's how it's gotta be. When they're out, feel a pride. I take full and very high for you're gonna dance with me.
Well, you got the point there. Marvelous. Thank you, Mark. Well, you see the quickness. The Uranus doesn't decide till the moment. It doesn't even know what it's going to do till the moment it does it. Everybody says, well, what's Uranus going to do to me, Rick? I don't know. Nobody knows until the day it hits. Even it doesn't know till it happens. That's the point of it. That's what Uranus does. And we have to have an energy in the zodiac that is that way to give us mutation. We have to have it. You can't have Saturn all the time. Everything's planned out by a list. Everything's got its purpose. And you saw that with his dancing. It's just so spontaneous. And I'll bet you some of that was choreographed and some of it wasn't. Marvelous example. Boy, I'm so spoiled to have Mark. I just say what I want. Woo! I'm going to talk about nice big fat steak, see what he can deliver. Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, let's go back. But you see how powerful it is in his chart. We didn't even show his chart. Let's get to it. Okay. It's really, really strong. Okay, look at it at the top of the chart. Right on the angle. I keep telling you, when a planet is on the angle, mine's right on that angle. When a planet is on that angle, you draw it big, big. It's a big deal, even though he's a Pisces. Oh, he's Pisces and he's restful and he's laid back and he's easy. No. And Uranus makes you humanitarian. Look what he did with his life. I don't need to tell you anything about that. Look what he did with his life. Helping all, friends to everybody, friends to the underdog. So that's a marvelous example. But you really see the spasticity in him, and you see it in Robin Williams. Just so quick. Okay, very good. Soft curly. Here's Eddie Murphy. Let's take a look at Eddie Murphy. Okay, Eddie's is not as strong, but it is in Leo. It's almost in the first house. It is trine to the midheaven. It is trine to his sun. It is trine to his Venus, so it's very strong. And it's naturally in Leo. And trines we've not talked enough about here. Trines are very natural. You have a natural ability. When you find somebody who could just do things really quickly and it's effortless, effortless is trine. That's where you have special energies that are connected. If they're not connected, you can't do it. When you look at Audrey Hepburn, you don't even have to look it up now. You know there's something Venusian about her, and you know it's otherworldly. It's otherworldly beauty. So you know Venus and Neptune are probably connected. When you see that kind of beauty that you just are speechless, or you watch Picasso paint, and you know it's Pluto, Mars. You get to a point in astrology where you don't even see the person. You're just seeing the energies. And the person is expressing them. They don't have to. They can't try to suppress them. They're all tied together. It's the person, it's the universe speaking through the person. Okay, let's take next on the list. Don Rickles. Okay, so we saw with Don Rickles the down-to-earth Taurus types of insulting, and the insulting was down-to-earth, it was in the gravel, but he was also very lunar. He really was very warm, and he did care about people. And he had a T-squared to Saturn in Scorpio. And that Saturn in Scorpio can be very cutting, and it goes right for your weak spot. But he turned it into an occupation. He was known as the insulter back when you didn't do things like that. But here's the Uranus up here, strongly placed, right with Venus. Very friendly, very quick. Again, we see it again. We see the Chiron is very strong in the chart too. Joan Rivers. Now we're talking about a Gemini female. I was wondering, I was trying to find, and I couldn't find out, what were the years that she started to become into fashion. When she got into fashion, I wanted to see what planet went over when she got fanatical about the dress police and these shows on TV where she's critiquing people's clothes and attire. But anyhow, you probably would have seen a Neptune transit during that time. So you see, 1933, you see the Uranus is rising in the first house. It's trine to the moon, and the closer, don't be fooled, the closer that orb is, the more powerful it is. This one is not powerful, it's 9 degrees, 1726. But if they were both at 17 or both at 26, it's extremely powerful. And the audience would sit there saying, how in the world did it do that? That's where it comes from. Speed, quickness, suddenness, brilliance is Uranian. Okay, but you see it is rising, and it's in Aries. Gemini women are known for a sharp tongue. What did she make her money? Her history was made on saying rather sharp, insulting, quick barbs. And I will say this, and I don't care who argues about this because I've seen it to be true. Gemini women are much more like that than the men are. Gemini men are much more laid back. Gemini women are much more inclined to have the sharp tongue. They just are. No other sign of the zodiac does the male and female differ more, in my opinion. I don't know why. Okay, there's the Uranus in Aries, and the Aries certainly lends it towards being more in attack mode, more direct, more barbed to it. Okay, let's go down the list there. Robin Williams. Look at the T-square. We've talked about this before. Here's the Jupiter-Neptune, kind of a cult following energy, all making a T-square to Mars and Uranus. There's tremendous, powerful energy pouring through Mars and Uranus. It's not just Uranus. Uranus picks up the Martian qualities. And that's why we're just so off the wall. Yeah, you have Mercury, Pluto in Leo at the top of the chart, making him needing to entertain all the time. But the Uranus is extremely powerful. Jonathan Winters. Look at Uranus all by itself. Almost every planet's below the horizon. Uranus is the only one up there by itself. Uranus in Pisces, opposite the moon. So we see in every one of these cases, we see how Uranus has major implications. Now I'm changing it now, so if you want to comment on anything, you can unmute yourself, ask questions, but I think you see the point here. I looked up Andy Kaufman earlier. That was a strange one. Yes. I thought I heard something. Go ahead, Erica.
I have some Gemini women friends, and the sense that I've picked up from them is that, you know, because it's ruled by Mercury, which is neither male nor female, it's kind of can do both, that they express their love in a masculine way, And that can come on in a very forceful way. And when they get angry, it's just the reverse of that, but it's also more masculine.
You see that with the president, with his Gemini, switching back and forth between those energies. Gemini is very, very difficult to understand and very misunderstood. A lot of it has to do with they speak their mind. They're so much into objectifying that they don't realize the implications of what they just said. Then they deny it. They say it, then they deny it. How many times the president's denying it? You have it on videotape and he's denying it.
What do you mean objectify?
That's the main thing about Gemini.
What does that mean, though?
All right, the first sign is Aries, obsessed with the state of being. It's very simple. The second sign is Taurus, obsessed with self. I'm here, my stuff, on my couch, my farm. I'm a hobbit. This is my hobbit hole. Gemini, my mind. Look at this. Look at that. Look at this. Look at that. Look at this. You saw Ted Spickler on here 2 weeks ago, the physicist, talk about tacit learning. He was obsessed with how the mind learns. So Gemini is about learning by exploring, okay? But it's not built yet for subjectiveness.
I see.
So my mother used to talk about me in front of other people like I was an object. She was a Gemini. And then she would switch and she'd be very Cancerian. Then she'd switch back and be very Geminian. Geminis do that. They talk about you as if you're an object in the room. Then they do. And then when they realize they may have said something too sharp, they disown it. Or they say, I was just kidding. Or quit being so sensitive. That's a very Gemini, and Sagittarius. Gemini, Sag. That's very common with both of those signs. So you ask yourself, don't you have the experience when you're around people and they say something to you and you're not sure were they joking or not? You know, you go like that. You see it all the time.
Yep.
Were they joking or not? I've come to believe that they did mean it. With Sag and with Gemini, very, very common with Sagittarius. Now, usually, what also is very funny about Gemini is they take things seriously that they should take lightly, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Look at the United States, how nuts they go over a pet rock, and how nobody's talking about Fukushima. Right? Things that are really serious because we have a Gemini or Sag rising, we take it very lightly and vice versa. It's not because Gemini is malicious. It's because they're not really built yet at the existential level. They're not really built at the archetypal level to be subjective. So here's what happens, and I really made it one of the main issues in writing The Exquisite Zodiac. Why is Gemini the twins? And I looked all over, and I talked to people all over, and all the books I could find, I never got any answer. And my answer that I published was that the Gemini explores, and when you explore and you're so objective and you're so objective, eventually it leads to where you have to have a subjective relationship with the object. Then they go, ah, ah, ah. So they're being objective until the subjectivity comes in. They don't know how to deal with it, and they run from it. That's what they call the two people, the twins. That's what it is. They're
Wow.
objective, and it leads to subjectivity before they're ready for it, because subjectivity comes in the next sign of Cancer. It's all subjective. Cancer's not objective at all. Cancer's, oh, how you made me feel, and oh, I'm with you. Oh, and when I'm with you, and oh, and you got to make me feel good. It's the complete opposite. So it's really not anybody's fault. It's just part of the natural scheme of the zodiac. What do you think, John? Does that make sense to you? You guys can unmute yourself if you want. I think I'm going to let this roll for a while. This is all going to YouTube, and it's a good discussion, so we can continue. What questions do any of you have about this issue? Barbara, yeah.
I'm just curious. Erica mentioned women exhibiting masculine love. Can you tell me what that looks like? I don't understand that.
Well, it's more of a slap on the back. Get in the car, let's go to the track, as opposed to, oh, let's go look at the new flower display. It's masculine. And these, you need to think about this, because this is really kind of hard to understand until you really give it thought. The odd numbered signs are masculine. Aries, Gemini, Leo, Libra, Sagittarius, Aquarius. The even numbered signs are feminine. This is very general. Of course, a chart can change. Feminine, Taurus, Cancer, Virgo, Scorpio, Capricorn, Pisces. The feminine signs let life come to them. The masculine signs go out towards life in general. If you look at a Gemini female, almost every one you will ever see, unless they have some moon in Cancer or something, they're just not very feminine. They can be very friendly, they're very funny, they're lively, party people, but they're not known for warm and fuzzy. They're just not. Now, Susan Aver, you being a Sagittarius, you are going to pick up, I'm muting you now. You are going to pick up some Gemini traits. Your chart is hard to see clearly because you got the strong Neptune and the Venus Saturn that changes the essential nature of the Sag. But if I'm not mistaken, you have a moon in Gemini, right? Okay, so you have the Sag Sun and the moon in Gemini. Okay, now I think you can sense the warmth from Susan. There's more warmth there than with a typical Sag. And I think that comes a lot from that Venus, Saturn, and Scorpio. Does any of this, what did you think? You're the one who got me going on this. What did you think about what you heard about all the Uranian nature of these comedians?
It makes sense. I do have rising, Aquarius rising. So I can identify with some Uranian energy as well as the Sag and the Gemini. I don't think I'm very cutting with people. I could be mistaken, but I don't think so. I certainly go out of my way to try not to be.
See, now
I don't want to step on toes.
The Sag in you would just go ahead and be cutting, but the Venus Saturn is very much behave yourself. I've learned that. I see thousands of people with Venus Saturn. It's unbelievable how common it is, and it's all about behave yourself. Don't say anything that's upsetting. That's Venus Saturn.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
I thought all of this was very interesting. I thought maybe the idea of Uranus being strong in a chart, but I was thinking Uranus Sun aspects might be a real prominent feature in comedians. I was kind of wondering about that. So that was why I asked.
The thing is, it's quick. And
right.
I didn't show you George Carlin, did I? Did I show you Carlin?
Not yet.
Okay, Carlin's the genius. He's the word dictionary genius, and I'll show you why. That has to come from Uranus. His ability to be on stage pouring out, and I think I heard him stumble once. I watch so many of his videos. He never misses a phrase. Unbelievable. That takes concentration. That's Uranian mixed with Taurus. There's no doubt. And take a look at his chart. No, I didn't get his chart. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, here you see in his chart. Not yet. Look how powerful. Look at the top of his chart. George Carlin, Uranus and Taurus right at the top. That's what gave him his ability. Yes, he's got Mercury in Taurus. Yes, Mercury's near the sun. Yes, the moon is in Gemini, which gave him a little bit of his perverted nature too. But this is where the quickness came from. This is where, I don't care what kind of slob he looked like, he was a wordsmith. He was a dictionary aficionado. He went crazy about how we talk to each other, the phrases, the idioms they would use. That's what was so compelling about him. This is where it comes from. See, you have a very good point, Susan. If it isn't there, you can't do it. If it's not there, you can't do it.
Do they all have trines that are significant?
No, you're not going to find any neat formula like that, no. But they all have strongly placed Uranuses, whether it's a tip of a T-square, whether it's the tip of a bucket pattern, whether it's conjunct one of the angles. It's usually one of the angles that does it. But you saw, and I did my research today, the ones that had, listen to this, the ones I found with the strongest Uranus were Jim Carrey, Jonathan Winters, Curly, Robin Williams.
Yeah.
That's where it
What
comes
about Lucille Ball?
Huh?
Lucille Ball was physical comedy, but I don't think she was
Yeah, but
verbally
the
quick.
problem with Lucille Ball is I don't think I can get her birth time. See,
Oh.
when they get older like that. When you don't have the birth time, it really throws you off. But you see what I'm talking about? That's why you being a teacher, you look across your class, and some kids are just really quick. In other words, you have to just go real slow and methodical. So let's talk about Uranus now. We can keep on the subject. It's 10 till. Let's talk about it transiting. We've talked about it natally. The chat message I got about, I've got a Gemini son who has a Gemini son who's 5 now. They're extremely close. It amazes me how they look up. Well, that may be because they're both Gemini, but it may be something else. So I need to see the whole chart before I can analyze that. But transiting Uranus, when this planet comes through, what I mean that it comes over top of a natal planet, and I have encouraged you all so much to go back in time and look at what Uranus did when it was opposite your sun, when it was at a right angle to your moon, when it went across the nadir, when it went over your midheaven. These are the shocking awakenings. It's either chaos or it's exciting, or maybe both. Chaos is always sudden, or exciting. The most exciting time I had in my life. Wow. Or it was just destructive and chaotic. And the ones that's chaotic too, what do you think's happening to them? Why do you think people have chaos when Uranus hits their chart? You can all unmute yourself now. Why do you think?
I think it's a wicked bounce.
What?
I think it's like a wicked bounce. It's where a ball bounces.
I can't hear you. It's because of what?
it's like if a ball bounces and you don't know what direction it's going to go, like what they call a wicked bounce.
Okay, why does Uranus cause chaos in one person's life and upset everything, and this other person it doesn't? You're on the right track. Because one is resistant to change. Can you believe this woman today? This woman had won $800 million. She said, she was interviewed. She said, I think I'm going to be okay. And it's the most ridiculous thing that anybody's ever said, but it just shows you that it's not ridiculous. Financially, she'll be okay. But it shook her world up so much that it was so mind-blowing. That's what she's talking about. Uranus is like a lightning bolt. It's like a lightning bolt. So, the people who go with the flow, I always use this analogy. The boat is coming down the river. It's coming down the rapids. Are you going to jump in the boat or not? Well, the ones that stand on the shore and hug the tree are the ones that dry up and die. That's simple. The ones who say, I'm not getting in the boat until I know where's it going to go, what time's it going to get there, when's it going to stop, we're going to have a hat on, sunscreen. Those are the ones going to have a hard time because they're not with the flow of life. The ones who get in the boat and go Yahoo and go with it do fine. Then there's the other type of person who's too crazy, who's too Uranian. They're the ones hanging out the front of their boat with their foot hanging onto the rope. Woo! So Uranus is that very healthy part of you. I don't know what I'm going to do, John, but I feel something coming. I'm not sure yet, John, but I feel it coming. You have to learn to listen for these words when you read for people, because that's how you can tell whether they're in tune or not. If they say to me, I'm not sure, something's breaking, I can't take it anymore, and I look and Uranus is 2 degrees from it in the midheaven, great, you're right on track. I'm not telling you to be a radical, leave the family, dump all your responsibility, but something has to burst. A new part of you wants out. With my other clients I've seen who were very stationary, go to work, come home, no chances, same chair, same life. I knew when Uranus came to hit them, they're in trouble, and they have strokes, and they have aneurysms. Not always, but it's very common because they spend so much time pushing this energy down. And we all make the mistake of thinking this energy is ours. It's cosmic energy. We are, heaven forbid, we are connected. We're connected to a larger self. Does this make sense to y'all? John, why don't you talk to us about what John's very good at this stuff. In case you don't know this, since 2011, from my owner. Who is my owner?
I always thought that was your computer.
No, there's an owner person, but I don't know who it is. They were telling you they are. Uranus has been in Aries 7 years, very consistently, 84 years around. It's been in Aries since April of 2011. It's coming out May 15th next year.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is Uranus coming out, and when it went into Aries is when we got the Arab Spring.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think it came from? In the month before the Arab Spring was, I'm getting there, we're getting there, we can't take it anymore, it's building, then boom, came out. Well, it's been in Aries a while now, causing a lot of trouble and a lot of good. And all the people in New York demonstrating and all that. Occupy movement. Now it's not only going to shift signs. When Uranus leaves a sign, now remember this is May coming up. Now, Aurelio teaches us about the anaretic degree, and exactly right. The anaretic degree is the last degree or the first degree of a sign. So as Uranus spent 7 years in Aries, when it starts to leave in April and May next year, it's going to stop at the edge of the stage, and it's going to present us with a summary in one event or several events. It's going to summarize what it did. So we're going to see, put the words together, the revolution of self. The revolution of self. This is largely where the women's movement is coming from, besides Eris. Then it's going to go into Taurus. And Uranus in Taurus is a dichotomy. Taurus is the one sign that doesn't want Uranus around because it wants stability and things the same, and Uranus is the opposite. So what do you think is going to happen, John, for those 7 years until 2025?
Well, I don't know if it's going to affect me at some point. I think about 2019 or 2020.
I'm sure it's going to affect you.
Rick, I've learned not to predict what Uranus is going to do. I mean, just as we talked.
I know, but generally.
Well, I think it's going to shake up a lot of firm foundations. I mean, everything, Torian, that you can think of. I mean, from money to food, you know, just, and I'm speaking very broad in general terms. I mean, I'm looking at things like Bitcoin, and I wonder if maybe that's going to take off in some kind of.
Volcanoes, no, that's Pluto.
Yeah, okay. Well, money, but I was thinking, but agriculture, I mean, it could be something with that, could be farming, could be some kind of, I mean, we already have automation, but maybe we'll come up with there will be some kind of technological breakthrough that will change that some kind of way. I guess, like I said, I backed away from trying to figure out what Uranus is going to do because, as you say, it happened.
I think like Tarna says, you can't predict concretely, but you can predict archetypally. So that's the real electronics and technology. Yes, all those things are true. One of the things that it's going to do is this. Taurus, by its own very nature, makes us fall asleep because it's, hey, I'll get things anchored, and when we're anchored, everything will be safe. And that's a very nice energy to have. Well, Uranus comes through and wants you to realize that that's deadening. It's comforting, but at some point, it's deadening. Okay? So we're going to start to see more shakeup, like Pluto has done in Capricorn. We're going to see more shakeup to our institutions, the ones that we've over-relied on. Here's the secret. There's no planet up there saying, well, I'm going to come get these guys because they're too lackadaisical. The planets are going to shake up areas where we become codependent or where we have relied on them too much and we've gotten away from our own instincts, our own courage. That's what it shakes up. If we follow along with our own courage in Taurus, there's nothing better than a Taurus that's out there that says, I'm willing to change. I can go with it because I know I can always stabilize once again later on. That's all the best of both worlds. Deregulation, the whole deregulation fire is going to be crazy because Uranus wants to deregulate and Saturn wants to regulate. So that whole fire is going to go on too. But the whole theme of Taurus, which is to anchor, Taurus's theme is to anchor. That's going to change. And a lot of people are going to start to see in their lives where they've done anchoring has not helped them. In fact, it has backfired. Okay, I'm going to bring an end to the videotaping on, and we'll continue on YouTube, and we'll say goodbye to our YouTubers. And thank you for joining us.